believe me, I don't want to do this interview. Whenever you see me in front of the camera, the chances are I don't want to be there. But really, what the press has said to me this week, without saying it, is don't try to get the truth through, because what we'll do is take your denials of what we've said and turn them into news stories. Much as I'd love to play cat and mouse with you all, I can't be freaking bothered. I want to get out. I want to go out.
Few artists come close to the superstardom of George Michael. In the early 80s, he conquered the world with the international popularity of Wham. He achieved hit after hit. And when the time came for him to become a solo artist, he didn't hold back. But his fame came at a price. His personal life became a target for the press, and mounting pressure would lead George into a turbulent battle for his own reputation. His sudden and tragic death on Christmas Day 2016 robbed the world of a legend. Join us as we look back at the unforgettable life and music of George Michael.
It has burst into bloom, it swings, it's the scene, it's switched on. Well, the words aren't ours, they're from America's Time magazine, whose biggest spread in their issue is on London, the swinging city.
George Michael was born Yorgos Kyriakos Panayiotou in East Finchley, London on June 25, 1963. His father, Kyriakos Jack Panayiotou, had emigrated to Britain in the 1950s, and his mother, Leslie Angold, was an English dancer. George spent most of his childhood in Kingsbury, London, and attended Kingsbury High School. In his early teens, the family moved to Radlett. It was there George befriended his future Wham partner, Andrew Ridgeley.
Did you ever think the boy from Radlett would be performing at the Royal Opera House?
Well, actually, funnily enough, the very first show that I ever played was at a Cub Scout hut in Bushey, up the road from the school. And there were about 400 or 500 people there, I think, mostly friends and family, you know. It was quite a large band. But it went incredibly well. And I've never actually appeared on stage and left disappointed to this day, so I'm hoping this isn't going to change any of that.
In 1981, Michael and Andrew formed the duo Wham, and their first album, Fantastic, reached #1 in the UK. Young Guns was their breakout hit. It captivated the sound and style of the times.
Hey, sucker, what the hell's got into you?
This was post-disco, bursting with bass, neon, and fun. The release of their second album, Make It Big, launched them into international fame as it reached #1 in both the UK and US charts. As they released single after single from the album, their fame just grew and grew. George released his first single while still in Wham. It was the song Careless Whisper, and it debuted on their album Make It Big. Opening with that iconic saxophone riff, the song sent shockwaves across the Atlantic and reached #1 in nearly 25 countries, selling almost 6 million copies worldwide. The music video was shot on location in Miami, Florida, and features the iconic locales, Coconut Grove and Watson Island. George Michael never regarded Careless Whisper very highly. He claimed it was disappointing that something you write that's not particularly good can mean so much to so many people. In 1984, Wham were part of the supergroup Band-Aid for the special recording of Do They Know It's Christmas? The group was put together by Bob Geldof. Geldof had seen television news reports of the disastrous famine in Ethiopia, which had been ongoing since 1983, and wanted to raise money to support the cause. He managed to gather the very best of 80s British musical talent and recorded the single in one day. Collaborators included Bono, Phil Collins, Boy George, Sting, Sarah Palin, Paul Weller, Jodie Watley, and many more. Geldof had hoped the single would raise £70,000, but it broke all records and £8 million were raised in 12 months.
Wake me up before you go. Leave me standing on like a yo-yo. Wake me up.
With the success of George Michael's solo singles, first Careless Whisper, and then A Different Corner, rumor of an impending breakup began circulating. It wasn't until 1986 that the duo announced they would officially separate. As a last goodbye, Wham performed in a sellout concert at Wembley Stadium.
Forward to seeing Wham! What about the fans? This is a thank you concert, isn't it?
Big thank
Oh
you.
yeah, to anyone who's not here
Especially the
today.
people who didn't manage to get tickets, you know. We'd love to have seen everyone off personally, but can't do it, you know.
With no regrets about splitting up.
So a huge thank you to everyone, not only today, but for the last 4 years.
George Michael's solo career got off to the strongest start imaginable. In 1987, he released I Knew You Were Waiting, a one-off duet with legendary singer-songwriter Aretha Franklin. Once again, he hit the #1 spot on both sides of the Atlantic, and he had staked his claim as a solo artist. Soaring off the back of his success, George released his debut solo album in late 1987, Faith. The first song on the album was the controversial hit, I Want Your Sex. With all the controversy, only came more attention, and in October 1987, George Michael released his next single, Faith.
Well, I guess it would be nice if I could touch your body. I know not everybody has got a body.
The music video provided some definitive images of the 1980s music industry. Shades, cowboy boots, Levi jeans, and a leather jacket.
Oh,
Faith managed to make '1 in the US and held its spot for 4 weeks. But in the UK, it made #2.
Cause I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith. Because I got to go for faith. I got to have
Radio is pretty much determined by where the money goes. But there are a lot of people in this room that over the years must have gone out on a limb for me or really supported me.
In 1988, George began a world tour that earned around $17.7 million. After his experience with the album Faith and the process of promotion, music videos, and touring, he was completely exhausted and made it clear to his record company Sony that for his next album, he did not want to go through that experience again. In 1990, he released Listen Without Prejudice, Volume 1. George Michael was trying to build a new reputation as a serious-minded artist, and the title was a clear indication of his desire to be taken more seriously as a songwriter. In November 1991, the world lost the iconic Queen frontman and openly bisexual rock star, Freddie Mercury. He was yet another victim of the tragedy of the AIDS crisis. As a show of solidarity and to bring awareness to this newly emerging killer, the remaining members of Queen held a benefit concert of epic proportion named A Concert for Freddie. George Michael was amongst some of the biggest stars of the time that performed classic Queen hits as a celebration of Freddie's life at the powerful and emotional event.
You did that on purpose then, isn't it? Try to get me wet. That's all. Get the fun. You've done a good job. Sorry, Ron. Don't know about your packet.
I think my reasonings for doing the show are fairly selfish. I've got a very close friend who's dying at the moment, battling very hard with probably the last few weeks of his life. So I think for me, there's a very personal interest in doing this particular show.
Oh, I wanted to do it straight away. You know, firstly because of Freddie Mercury, because he was such a big personality and, you know, everyone really sort of felt something for him.
And despite all the glamour and razzmatazz, it will be a serious message trying to promote AIDS education on a truly global scale.
somebody to. Come on!
Yes.
Sorry, how much else was moved?
Oh no, it wasn't the phone. Yeah, I got the dog though.
HIV and AIDS became a stigma that surrounded the gay community. Many of George Michael's fans began to share their concern because the star had never been open about his own sexuality.
I don't just mindlessly sit there and write about every single pop star and slag them off. I had very parallel experiences with George Michael. We're both called George. We were both big in the 80s. We were both gay. We both dealt with it in very different ways. And we were perceived very differently. You know, I was seen as the kind of obvious homosexual, when in actual fact I was in a relationship and George was going to toilets. Now, I'm not saying that as a judgment, I'm just saying it as an observation, and I think it's a very interesting observation. And that doesn't mean I don't think he's talented and that I've got Wham records.
In 1992, he had a secret relationship for 6 months with Anselmo Filippa, a Brazilian dress designer. When Filippa discovered he was HIV positive, he returned to Brazil for treatment and died shortly thereafter. That experience rocked George's world. His single, Jesus to a Child, released in 1996, is a tribute to Filippa. He later revealed that after his death, he suffered from a severe depression. In 1993, George Michael entered a fierce court battle with his record company Sony in a bid to regain control of his own music. He had signed the contract as a young, upcoming artist, and now found himself locked out of his own work, not owning any of it and not having a say in its use. The case waged for over a year.
What is it going to mean for the record industry?
But in the end, the court wholly rejected the claims, and Sony left victorious.
Inside, the courtroom was packed with hundreds of people jostling for space. Mr. Justice Jonathan Parker came in, sat down and said in one sentence, George Michael's claim against Sony is dismissed. The star sat at the front of the court with his head bowed and listened as the judge gave brief reasons for his decision. On hearing the judgment, fans wept. George Michael has already said he will never record for Sony again. Driving off, he made for a local hotel and a news conference.
I am shocked and extremely disappointed at the judgment of Mr. Justice Parker. Having received this judgment, I would like to reiterate the reasons why I embarked upon these proceedings. Firstly, when I was 18 years old, I entered into a recording contract with CBS Records. At 30 years old, my contract still has 10 years to run. Secondly, even though I both created and paid for my work, I will never own it or have any rights over it. I have no control or say in the way that my work is exploited. In fact, I have no guarantee that my work will be released at all. If Sony reject my work, it will never see the light of day. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, I have no right to resign. I am convinced that the English legal system will not support Mr. Justice Parker's decision or uphold what is effectively professional slavery.
In 1996, 3 years after his lover's death, his mother lost her battle with cancer. This pushed George Michael over the edge, and the following years would prove to be unbearable.
I have not cheated or lied about my sex life. The fact that my private life is of ongoing interest to straight people is really not why I'm here.
Questions about Michael's sexuality persisted until April 7, 1998, when he was arrested for engaging in lewd acts in a public restroom at the Will Rogers Memorial Park in Beverly Hills, California.
Beverly Hills police officers arrested the singer known as George Michaels. Mr. Michaels was arrested for a violation of 647A of the Penal Code, engaging in a lewd act.
In a 2004 interview with talk show host Oprah Winfrey, George Michael expressed how he thought getting caught was subconsciously a deliberate act to finally out himself.
You know,
you and Kenny were together at the time?
Yeah, we've been together at this time for about 2.5 years. It's a very strange thing, really. I mean, when I looked back at it afterwards, it was so obvious that it was deliberate on my part, strange as it may seem.
He said that hiding his sexuality made him feel fraudulent, but opening up to his fans was too much to face. He revealed to the world that he had a long-term partner, Kenny Goss, a former flight attendant. George Michael was arrested by an undercover policeman in a sting operation to crack down on gay cruising in that area. He pleaded no contest to the charge and was fined $810 and sentenced to 80 hours of community service. From then on, not only his sexuality, but his lifestyle became center to a debate that was waged by the press. A debate that would try to squander his reputation.
First of all, thank you for talking to us.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
George, you are in a stable, long-term relationship.
Yeah, so celebrated my 10th anniversary about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago.
You've got a sell-out tour ahead
Got a
of you.
sell-out tour. Well, in general, I mean, I'm a very, very lucky man. As you said, I've got a wonderful partner. My career is still a great joy to me, despite the media. I'm healthy and happy and living my life, and for some strange reason, I'm here again, you know, in response to some pretty extreme behaviour by the press media. So, regardless of all the blessings that I have in life, I truly believe that, you know, I shouldn't have to deal with what I'm dealing with right now, which is all based on complete lies. You know, I mean, I hate not to be able to rise above it, but there's only so much you can take. And when the media starts to put slurs on my relationship and indicate that my partner, who is perfectly happy with the way I live my life and the way we live our lives together, that my partner is calling off our registered partnership, and that I'm having to buy him back with money. These kind of things are just unacceptable to me, and I'm really just here to say I've had enough, really, and I'm going to have to take legal action against pretty much everybody involved.
Yeah, that is why then this is your right of reply. Why
Well,
do you
yes.
want to do this interview?
Yes, well, I believe me, I don't want to do this interview. Whenever you see me in front of the camera, the chances are I don't want to be there. But really, what the press has said to me this week, without saying it, is don't try to get the truth through, because what we'll do is take your denials of what we've said and turn them into new stories. You know, I talked about this before. I don't suppose this will be much of a story, which I don't suppose it would have been without the addition of a completely fabricated encounter with, I suppose, a very deliberately chosen, very unattractive man in order to try and somehow turn what is, for me, a perfectly nice summer evening under the stars into some act of desperation. You know?
But that's the problem, isn't it? That some people don't regard it as a perfectly normal thing to do at 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's not really my problem. The absolutely normal thing to do is to do it at 2 o'clock in the morning, because there is one other thing that needs to be said is that I'm no longer breaking the law in any way. I've said I enjoy cruising, and cruising now, if you cruise out of sight of the average individual, or an individual who's not involved in that cruising, then you are within the parameters of the law. The fact that my private life is of ongoing interest to straight people is really not why I'm here. I'm here to say that when a story is written about you in the media and you deny that story, that deserves to be heard.
There are some people out there who are not homophobic, who are in a relationship, be that gay or straight, doesn't matter. They don't understand why somebody in a long-term relationship, in a partnership, wants to have casual sex outside of that relationship.
And I think women almost never understand this phenomenon, and I totally respect that. I don't try to explain it to them.
And some men, and
yes,
some
but,
gay
yes,
men
but many,
as well.
but many men, many more men than will admit it, totally understand the concept, because the idea of no-strings sex is very attractive to most men, gay or straight.
In terms of people who don't understand why somebody would want casual sex outside of a relationship, can you understand that they would be confused about why you would put your health at risk, potentially?
No, I'm sorry, I'm not here to talk about this. We can talk all night if you want to about how dangerous it is to go to a bar or a pub or an ordinary
All
club
these
in
things
life
have
these days.
potential
And
risks.
I'm saying that I have been doing this on and off since I was a teenager and never once seen violence. If I want to see violence or what I call shameful behaviour, the idea that women in clubs these days have to hold their hand over their drink for fear of being drugged, please don't tell me as a member of the straight community that I am taking risks. I know what I do, and I'm sorry, but we should not be taking questions like this from straight women in particular,
Okay.
or male
from gay
or males.
people, from gay
but
people
gay
who
people,
don't-
very few gay people are internally homophobic enough to say we don't want to be represented like
But
this.
neither you or I can speak for other gay people.
No, we
out
can't.
there.
We can't. But what I can say is I do not deserve the criticism. I'm not lying. I'm not cheating anyone. These are normally the elements of a straight scandal, is that a kiss and tell involves a straight person who is cheating or lying. I have not cheated or lied about my sex life to anybody in my life, in my entire life. I'm really just here to say I've had enough, really, and I'm going to have to take legal action against pretty much everybody.
When Michael's fifth studio album, Patience, was released in 2004, it was critically acclaimed and went straight to #1 on the UK Albums Chart and became one of the fastest-selling albums in the UK, selling over 200,000 copies in the first week alone. Amazing, the third single from the album, became a #1 hit in Europe. In the early hours of Sunday, July 4th, 2010, Michael was returning from the Gay Pride Parade. The singer was spotted on closed-circuit television crashing his car into the front of a Snappy Snap store in Hampstead, North London, and was arrested on suspicion of being unfit to drive.
Police officer contacted us several hours later and saying that someone had driven into the door and they had arrested someone, and that was as far as they left it from there. They contacted us again to say they will contact us on Wednesday to fill us in. We've woken up today to read the newspapers and to many texts to say that it was a certain celebrity that's driven into our door.
Question is he in?
Hello?
Oh, hello. Is George Michael in, please?
No, I'm afraid not, sorry.
Clearly not taking any calls today.
On August 12th, London's Metropolitan Police said he was charged with possession of cannabis and with driving while unfit through drink or drugs. It was reported that Michael had also been taking the prescription medication amitriptyline. On August 24, 2010, the singer pleaded guilty at Highbury Corner Magistrates Court in London after admitting driving under the influence of drugs. On September 14, 2010, at the same court, he was sentenced to 8 weeks in prison, a fine, and a 5-year ban from driving.
In reality, I've been sentenced today on the basis of unfit driving through tiredness and prescription medicines, which I fully accept responsibility for.
We all have a sleep, don't worry.
I am glad to put this behind me, and now I'm off to do the biggest show of my life.
Michael was released from High Point Prison in Suffolk on October 11, 2010, after serving 4 weeks.
Stars wouldn't move out of London because of these stories. It would be career suicide. London is where it's at. You know, you can't sustain a showbiz career from a little village in Cheshire or, you know, Cumbria. It just won't happen.
I just want to say thank you to everybody that supported me in there. It's quite inspirational, and I'm coming out here on my own so that you'll realise I just want to start again. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to try and stop running away from you guys. You'll get sick of me. You'll probably see me about.
George,
all right?
Tom, George,
George,
George, just wait.
Thank you, George. Don't look at the code. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I've just thought of a really good idea for a song. So it's not going to be nothing to do with prison.
The Symphonic Tour was announced in May 2011. The tour began at the Prague State Opera House on August 22, 2011.
Everything must change with all
How did you go about choosing some of these, really iconic European music venues?
Well, the idea of singing with symphony orchestras around the world was actually inspired by something, because I'd actually heard that Tony Bennett had done it recently. I thought, what a lovely idea to actually go to various places around the world and play with those symphony orchestras. Originally, I hoped to play almost entirely theatres and the places that those symphony orchestras would normally play, and then it became fairly obvious that I was either going to have to play each one for 2 weeks, or I would not get to play to enough of my fans, really. And the idea of actually singing with this kind of backing has been very attractive to me for a long period of time, but I kind of thought it was something that, for instance, when I made the Songs from the Last Century album, the reason I didn't go and do what would have been the obvious thing to do, which was play at the Albert Hall, film it and make a big deal of it, was I thought almost that I was, at that time, I guess I was 37. I thought I was almost too young to be making that statement, because it's the kind of thing people tend to do closer to the end of their careers. It couldn't be further from the truth then, and it's still not true to say that I'm ready to be a crooner and not much more, because of course during this tour and in the breaks that there are on this tour, I'll be recording a brand new album, which is about as far away from this Symphonica idea as could be imagined, really. And I felt that it was a great time. I felt very kind of re-energized after some of my recent troubles. And I felt it was a really good time. What do I want as an artist? As an artist at this stage, I think I've said before that I'm really not interested or excited by repeating former successes. And in my writing, I think I try to keep changing things about. But at this stage in life, there are two elements that I feel can be explored further. One is dance music, and one is the idea of my voice. And I think there's always been a very obvious love from my fans for both sides of what I do. And as an artist, I think all you can want is to make each new piece of music more authentic to who you really are. Once your ego is sated in a way, and once you're really not worrying about charts, and believe me, luckily I'm not worrying about charts very much, once that's happened, authenticity becomes the thing you strive for. And that means to me more honesty and more of myself in each of those areas. So I think musically, both things will be very different to what people are expecting, but they're both more honest, and I've always wanted to sing with this kind of backing so I could really, really use my voice and not just concentrate on keeping thousands and thousands of people really excited for 2.5 hours. I've probably got one more of those tours in me, but right now I'd like to have something slightly different. And then the album, which is something, again, which is me being far more true to myself in terms of lyrical content, in terms of the music that I listen to now, having been an out gay man for the best part of 13 or 14 years. So both projects are distinctly, very distinctly separate, but I want to work on them both together, and so that in my mind the progress is all happening at the same time, maybe because I feel I have so much time to make up for. And I really hope that my fans, and possibly some new fans, will arrive with each project, because they really are going to be very different. in terms of trying to kind of stay on the straight and narrow, as it were, then there's nothing better than work that you love. And so I thought I should tour sooner rather than later.
It's so clear to me now. I've enough of these chains. Life is there for the taking. What kind of fool would remain in this dream-gilded cage? I think I know I'm through.
What does it mean to be doing the Royal Albert Hall?
It's the first time I've actually played a whole show of my own here. I've only been here for charity events and gone on with other people. So it's the first time, and I'd forgotten actually how, well, it's such an intimate venue. It's beautiful, but it's so intimate, it's almost, it's going to be very strange being that close to everyone compared to some of the other gigs we've played, but I'm really excited about it.
And what about the London audience compared to the rest of the tour you've done?
Well, normally normally they are my best audiences. There are a couple of other countries that compete pretty well, but normally the Londoners are kind of my home crowd, so they tend to make the most noise.
In November, he had to cancel the remainder of his tour as he had become severely ill with pneumonia in Vienna, Austria.
Looking weak but feeling better, this is the first we've seen of George Michael for over a month, outside his North London home and with just a few emotional words.
I really, 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 from the bottom of my heart, thank everybody who sent messages and everybody in that IC unit that made sure that I'm still here today. I really can't say any more because I'm trying to get over the tracheotomy.
His statement was brief, designed to reassure his fans and put an end to a month of unhelpful speculation about his illness. The star called the media to his Highgate house with just an hour's notice. He said he'd been frustrated not to be able to speak sooner.
Well, I'd say touch and go for a couple of weeks. And we played it down. I didn't want to worry my fans too much. And I'm really sorry that I couldn't contact them in any way before now, but I was really not in any state to.
This is where he spent the past month, a Vienna hospital, one he now considers to be the best in the world.
Basically, by far, the worst month of my life, but I'm incredibly, incredibly fortunate to be here and incredibly fortunate to have picked up this bug where I did, because apparently the hospital in Austria that they rushed me to was absolutely the best place in the world I could have been.
He complained of chest pains just a couple of hours before going on stage there. He was rushed to hospital and spent 2 of the past 4 weeks in intensive care.
George Michael suffered from pneumococcal pneumonia, which is a very nasty infection indeed. Some of the figures that are coming out of the United States say that 5% of people who contract that particular sort of pneumonia will actually die from it. And so in some respects he's a very lucky man. And he's been very ill indeed, so I think he will be unwell or feel unwell for a number of weeks to come and feel very tired, but hopefully after a month or two he'll make a full recovery.
He's clearly far weaker than he was here, but he's adamant that he'll be back on form soon and playing for all those who missed out last month.
Absolutely, without question. The plan is to play to every single person who had a ticket. And also, actually, I would like to play one other show for the doctors in the hospital in Austria that saved my life, because I spent the last 10 days since I woke up literally thanking people for saving my life.
He's asked now for privacy as he continues his recovery from an illness which was quite clearly a very close call.
Cheers everyone, have a great Christmas.
OK, we've got some breaking news coming to us here via Thames Valley Police, who have confirmed the death of the singer George Michael at the age of 53.
In the early hours of Christmas morning, December 25th, 2016, Michael died at his home in Goring-on-Thames, aged 53. He was found dead, lying in bed, by his then partner, Fadi Fawaz. No cause of death was immediately determined, although his manager, Michael Lipman, conjectured that heart failure was the cause of death and that Michael passed away peacefully.
I'm here because I grew up with George Michael, and I remember when Wham were first on Top of the Pops in 1982. I was about 8 years old, but I still remember it clearly, and everyone was talking about it the next day, and I've just been a big fan ever since, particularly solo stuff, and I was just so shocked hearing the news last night. And you know, me and my sisters knew we had to come here today. I've left a candle and a card, and it's great to see so many people here and the Christmas tree in the background. And yeah, that's the reason I'm here. It's just really sad.
Yeah, I didn't hear till late because I was locked away writing, and I got a call and was absolutely dumbfounded. I bumped into some friends who'd seen him at church on Christmas Eve at Goring, so he was rounded about doing things. But he had become very reclusive. Obviously, but I mean, an enormous talent that had become very philanthropic, I think, as the years have gone past. I mean, more and more is emerging. He's a very generous man, but more is emerging about his sort of almost philanthropy, which is incredible.
As well as being a great artist, George was also a star with a social conscience. He spoke out against injustice, against the Iraq War, and helped raise millions for AIDS charities. Many of us wished he'd come out earlier than he did, because in the 1980s, the gay community was under attack from the tabloid press, from the Conservative government, and there was a huge rise in public hostility and gay bashing attacks. But we understand why he didn't, because he saw what happened to other public figures who were vilified and scapegoated and demonized by the tabloid press when they did come out.
Absolutely shocked, because as I say, that so many famous people have died this year, and to lose George Michael is a tragedy, really sad, really sad. Such a big name in pop, isn't he? He's just
another young life, really.
Too young, too famous, too soon.
Very sad news. It's capped off a bad year for music with Prince dying, David Bowie earlier in the year.
I first met George in about 1980 at a small gay disco above a pub by Manor House tube station. He was a great dancer. He used to sing along to the songs, and he had a great voice. He said at the time that he was going to be a pop star. Not that he wanted to be a pop star, but he was going to be a pop star. I thought to myself, well, maybe. Imagine my surprise 3 years later when he really did hit the big time with Wham.
On December 29, 2016, a post-mortem was undertaken to determine the exact cause of death, but was inconclusive. Further tests were carried out, and on March 7, 2017, a senior coroner in Oxfordshire attributed the death to natural causes.
First and foremost, the music, that's what he was known for. And I think he surprised a lot of people in his solo career because he was in a sort of pop band and he established himself as a fantastic songwriter in his own right. But his charity work was well known as well, how a generous person he was. I've spoken to people who lived around here in the past and said he's always really friendly, always very chatty, very approachable. And that's what he'll be known for. And you can see by the people out here today. And it's very sad, but his music will live on.
Even as the world comes to terms with his passing, the music of George Michael can still be heard. He scored hit after hit throughout his career that spanned almost 3 decades and created timeless songs that will continue to live on and keep his memory alive forever.
I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith. Because I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith.
You've got a little pair of bunny rabbit ears you could stick there.